Okay, here we go. It's January 2nd, 2025. We cover some college football. They had a roller coaster day. We discuss Saquon chasing history. We go through the slate of NBA games from last night. We talk a little bit of hockey. We get into the status of Pete Alonso's market. I have been pumped, excited to talk about Pete Alonso, his market, where he may end up in 2025. But this is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings, on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, so we start out with the college football playoff. Now, this show is meant to be a weekday show, so we don't get a lot of college football. That being said, the bowl games are during the week, especially this year, the way it falls out. So we have what to talk about. The day started out on more of a somber note. The incident in New Orleans where a car rammed into a large crowd of people, resulting in multiple deaths and injuries. The way it was reported, I'm just reading straight from ABC News. A man in a white pickup truck who was hell-bent on killing as many people as possible drove around barricades and plowed his vehicle through a crowd of New Year's Eve revelers in New Orleans, leaving at least 10 dead, officials said. So I just wanted to provide context for anybody who's unaware about what happened. The attack is currently being investigated for acts of terrorism. Obviously, the thoughts go out to all those lost and who were injured. So the event took place on Bourbon Street, which is currently, right now, considered an active crime scene. So that called into question whether the game between Georgia and Notre Dame, the All-State Sugar Bowl, was going to be played. Initially, the New Orleans police commissioner said the game was going to happen as planned. That was at around 9 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day, on Wednesday. Then at around 2 o'clock, Pete Alonso tweeted, "Have been told by sources that the Sugar Bowl will be postponed. There's no official date yet. There's no official date set yet for when it will be played. Officials are huddling and monitoring a fluid situation, and the game being played tomorrow is in discussion." So this was a big topic of controversy yesterday, whether this game should be played. The New Orleans Attorney General came out. She said that it's an active crime scene. There's no reason for the game to be played. Just after that Pete Alonso tweet came out, the CEO Jeff Hundley of the Sugar Bowl came out and said that the game was going to be played earlier on June 2nd, today on June 2nd, and so that's going to take place at 4 o'clock. Just a crazy situation. So as all those questions were being answered, the Peach Bowl was already underway. So this was all taking place at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, and the Peach Bowl kicked off at 1 o'clock Eastern. And this game started out, Texas, 17-3, but Arizona State came back and forced overtime. And this was what people were saying was the crown jewel of the college football playoff. Exactly why they expanded to 16 teams. And this was what it was all about, this game. Quinn Ewers threw for 322 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception. Matthew Golden for Texas scored a touchdown on 149 receiving yards. But the big story for Texas was Bert Auburn missing 2 field goals. One to go ahead late, and one to win the game. And had Texas lost this game, yes, the big storyline would have been Arizona State coming back from down 17-3. We would have been talking about Cam Skattebo, however you pronounce his name, Yadabi Skattebo. We would have been talking about him. But Bert Auburn would have been possibly the bigger storyline in this game. We will not be talking about the fact that he missed 2 huge field goals to cost Texas this game. Instead, we're talking about Texas moving on. Now, the big storyline from the other side, from Arizona State, was this guy, Cam Skattebo. He rushed for 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, 99 receiving yards. I'm nervous to make this comparison. You watch this guy, yes, they're both white, but you watch this guy, and you just think to yourself, this guy, it's a hard comparison to make. He's a great player, but Christian McCaffrey comes to mind when you think about Ben Skattebo. And the reason, I have real rationale for that. First of all, their builds are very similar. The way Ben Skattebo was able to create space as a receiver, I don't think I've seen that from any other running back besides McCaffrey. That's really what kind of when it clicked for me that I made that comparison. People were comparing him to Charbonnet on Seattle, the way he plays. I see that as well. A little bit of that. But just the way Skattebo was able to extend plays after being hit, the way he was able, as I said, to create space down the field. He had 99 receiving yards. He just gives me that vibe. Now, again, this is not an X's and O's podcast. This is where we report on what happened the day before. We talk about some things that upset me, that made me happy. Not an X's and O's podcast. That's just the comparison I saw. And so according to CBS Sports NFL draft expert Chris Trapasso, Skattebo is supposed to be taken somewhere in the 3rd round. I love this guy. I think this guy's got a great vibe. I think he'd be an asset to any team in the NFL that wants to take him. Okay, so the next game on the slate, after everyone was so excited, was Oregon-Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. And this was 1-8. Oregon 1, Ohio State 8. And Ohio State, if you remember, they lost to Michigan. Their ranking went down a lot. And so maybe this matchup's a little closer than 1 versus 8. Maybe Ohio State is really a better team than that. And that's what they showed. They whoop Oregon 41-21. They got out to a 34-0 lead. It looked like varsity against JV. It looked like varsity against the middle school team. That's what this game looked like. Ohio State gets out to that lead. They never look back. Oregon scores a buzzer beat, not really a buzzer beater, but after time had already expired in the first half, they score a touchdown. They go for 2. So going into the half, it was 34-8. But Ohio State never looked back. Will Howard threw for 319 yards for the Buckeyes, while Jeremiah Smith, that guy is also a baller. That guy is fantastic. He led the team with 187 receiving yards. He had 2 touchdowns. And Ohio State plays Texas in the next round of the college football playoff to see who will play for the national championship. And so today we see who is going to round out that Final Four with Penn State, Ohio State, Texas. And that game will be at 4 o'clock today between Notre Dame and Georgia. Okay, so let's move on to, while we're on football, let's move on to the NFL. Not a lot of big stories yesterday. The one thing that caught my eye and that got me a little bit upset was the Eagles announcing that Saquon Barkley is going to be resting on Sunday. And this is significant why. Saquon is 100 yards away from tying and 101 yards away from breaking the single-season rushing record. And so the statement that came out, this is according to NFL.com. I pulled it straight from there. It's a very special, this is from Nick Sirianni. It's a very special record that's been standing for a very long time by a great player. It's a team record that everybody's involved in, so you weigh in all those things. But at the end of the day, you just try to do what's best for the team. Again, when the bye was and how guys are feeling, the bumps and bruises we can take care of. We've put ourselves in a position to be able to be in this situation. And our goals are to have success and to play good the next game we play. Not only New York, but whoever we play after that. Okay, you see how we kind of tied in New York there. We think this plays into that. It's not easy. It wasn't an easy decision to go through, but we have great people in the building and had a lot of input from a lot of different people, players included. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? He has the chance to break the single-season rushing record. We've seen great running backs recently in the last couple of years. Le'Veon Bell, Adrian Peterson, Christian McCaffrey. The list goes on and on and on. Those are the three I just thought of off the top of my head. And you're telling me Saquon has a chance to break the rushing record, the single-season rushing record? Against his former team that he slapped in the face? After they came out and said, on Hard Knocks, the whole situation where John Mara is saying it would be horrible to see him in the division. And you're telling me, on the perfect stage, in the perfect situation, they're not going to let Saquon go and break the record? At least give him a shot. Say, hey, buddy, you have a half to go do it. Don't get hurt. Let's drop some plays to get you some space, to get some big yard plays and get this thing done and get you back into the locker room and get you on the massage bench. It would take him 4 or 5 plays if we really put our minds to it. Let's put our minds to it. Let's drop a couple of plays that make it work. I mean, are you kidding me? Against the Giants, he could break the single-season record? They're not going to let him? Now, look, they have the 2nd seed in the conference. I get it. They're not winning the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to... That argument doesn't hold that much weight, but I think personally, when I think about it, I'm thinking this team doesn't have a chance. I genuinely do not think they can win the Super Bowl. And so it's kind of funny. We're going to look back. We're going to say, in my mind, we're going to say, here was a team that did not inevitably win the Super Bowl and did not give Saquon the chance to break the record. That bothered me so much. But let's move on. We're going to go now to the NBA. It was a big slate last night. We start with Bulls and Wizards. The Wizards have actually been playing great recently. I watched a couple of games when they played the Knicks. They beat the Bulls 125-107. Jordan Poole had 30 points. Alexander Starr had a double-double for the Wizards on 11 points and 10 rebounds. Zach LaVine led the way for the Bulls with 32 points in the loss. The Wizards are still dead last in the Eastern Conference. And Chicago has the 9 seed in the East. Okay. Magic Pistons. The Pistons won 105-96. Jaden Ivey led the Pistons with 22 points. He left the game actually on a stretcher after colliding with Cole Anthony of the Magic. Each of the starting 5 for the Pistons were in double digits, and they have such a nice balanced attack. When you can have that and you have such balanced scoring, I like this Pistons team to kind of excel a little bit past where they already are. They have, as it stands today, they have a spot in the play-in, which I would love to watch them. I think this is a fun team. This is a team we would love to see more of come playoff time. Jalen Suggs scored the most for the Magic. He had 24. Pelicans at Heat. Heat won this one 119-108. Tyler Herro had 32 for the Heat. Bam Adebayo had 23 points and 10 assists. 1 rebound away from the triple-double. The storyline of this game, though, was Jimmy Butler. He came back to play. 25 minutes. He scored 9 points on 3 of 5 shooting. So amid all the trade rumors for Butler, all the reports that he's requesting a trade, the Heat currently are in the 6th seed. So the Heat not wanting to trade him, you can't blame them for not wanting to trade Jimmy Butler if they think they have a real shot. And honestly, what's not such a strong Eastern Conference? The Knicks are great. The Celtics are great. I still think the Cavs are kind of pretenders, but it's hard for me to be serious about that. But you're really telling me there's such a dominant team in let alone in basketball, but in the Eastern Conference, where Pat Riley's not going to say, hey, let's give this thing a shot. Hey, Jimmy, let's meet for a second. Let's talk. We have a real shot if you come and play and put in a little more effort than 9 points. This is going to be a fun. I think this Jimmy Butler thing is going to be a very fun story, especially if the Heat continue playing well. Okay, let's move on. Jazz at Knicks. Knicks had no Jalen Brunson. That wasn't a problem. They won 119-103. Karl Anthony Towns, he led the Knicks with 31 points. He recorded a double-double with 21 points. OG Anunoby had 22. Mikal Bridges had 27. And they're really finding their groove. Cat's a superstar. He's exactly what the Knicks were missing. When you watch the Knicks play and you watch Karl Anthony Towns, you say to yourself, this is the superstar we were missing. This is exactly what Jalen Brunson needed. Nobody who was going to completely overshadow him, but somebody who was going to clearly be the superstar on the team. Colin Sexton had 25 for the Jazz. That was their team high. Jordan Clarkson, he had 25 off the bench. And the Knicks, they're holding on to the 3 seed in the East. They are a game behind the Celtics for the 2 seed. Okay. Nets Raptors. Raptors won 130-113. They snapped an 11-game losing streak. Scotty Barnes had 33 with 13 rebounds. Cam Johnson had 24 for the Nets. And D'Angelo Russell in his Nets return. Remember, he was traded for Schroeder about a week or so ago. So D'Angelo Russell had 22 points in his Nets re-debut. Mavs at Rockets. Rockets won 110-99. Alperen Şengün with 23 points for the Rockets. Quentin Grimes led the way for the Mavs. In the loss, he had 19. Dallas, who were the 4 seed, they're 2.5 games behind the Rockets for the 3. Okay, Hawks Nuggets. Nuggets dismantled the Hawks 139-120. Jokic had 23 points and a triple-double, 15 assists and 17 rebounds. And Trae Young led the way with 30 for the Hawks. And finally, 76ers lost to the Kings after the Kings finished the game on a 15-0 run. Kings win 113-107. Aaron Fox led the way for them with 35 points. Paul George had a 30-game performance for the Sixers. I don't know how much on this show I'm going to keep talking about Joel Embiid. He rested this game, and so they lost. Shocker there. But when you see sitting due to rest, and you see that directly correlating to a loss, does that not make you upset? The statement I said the other day was, Joel Embiid is exactly what's wrong with today's NBA. That is what I said. That is the line I said. And this game right here, this personifies that to a T. In the late moments of a basketball game, you need your superstars to be there to close the game. And here, Kings finish on a 15-0 run and win the game and beat the 76ers. This is exactly what I meant when I said he is what's wrong with the game today. He is always hurt. It's astonishing. He's always needing rest, better put. It's sickening to see this happen. It is sickening. Meanwhile, LeBron James' son, Bryce James, he picked his school today. So he will be attending the University of Arizona. And this reminded me of what we spoke about a couple days ago about LeBron saying he wants to play for the next 5 to 7 years. So he's 40 now, so say he plays for the 5 to 7 years. And you see that was a calculated line. That was a calculated idea by him. Clearly, he wants a shot to play with both of his sons, Bryce and Bronny, if Bronny even survives that long. I wonder, though, so when Bryce plays, he's going to only play home games, or he's going to play home and away games? That's a reference because Bronny is in the G League is only playing home G League games. Right. Very normal thing to do. As a basketball prospect, the normal thing to do when you're trying to get playing time and get better is play half the games. Normal. Very normal thing to do. Okay, let's go on to hockey. So we had one game last night. We'll get into the Winter Classic recap in a second, but we had one game last night. The Kings beat the Devils 3-0. Darcy Kemper blocked 33 of 33. Andre Reed, he got the Kings on the board in the second period, and the Kings never looked back. The Devils still hold on to the 2 seed in the East, and they're an excellent team. They are 1 point behind the Caps, and the Kings move into third with that win. Okay, so on New Year's Eve, for the first time ever, the Winter Classic took place. It was between the Blues and the Blackhawks, and the Blues completely blew out the Blackhawks, who are not a good team. They won 6-2. And what I said was, a couple things. We haven't had a good Winter Classic game in a long time, a memorable one, and this was no different. The game was horrible. Blackhawks are a bad team. So, takeaway number one. Yes, you schedule these games a year out. Get some better teams to participate in this game. Make a good game. Now, what I had said was, if you're going to do New Year's Eve, do it later in the night. Have the game end around midnight. More of a fun vibe. Something to watch before the ball drops. I'm gonna half apologize for that take. I actually think that the 6 o'clock puck drop was a nice time. I think actually the game is better played at night. Obviously, it's colder at night, which is better for ice conditions. That's a whole other story. But the vibe of this game, I think for sure, watching it, as painful as it was a bad game. It was better played at night. It was better played on New Year's Eve. They were right. It's better to not be competing with an entire slate of college football playoff games. And this was, I think, the better move. Okay, so we're going to do a first here on the early game pod. I'm going to try to sprinkle in some picks. And so a game caught my eye on the hockey slate tonight. The Caps are playing the Wild. On the book I was looking at, Washington was -1.5 at +170. I think that's a great play. Caps are playing great puck right now. And so that is the first pick in early game history. Okay, let's round it out with some baseball. John Heyman today, what he does a lot is he will go on Bleacher Report and he will do these live AMAs. Side note, they're very funny to watch. John is very entertaining, at least for me. He goes on tangents very easy. And so what has been said for weeks is that it was asked, I think the question was actually, is there any interest from the Angels to Pete Alonso? And he actually said that the Angels are checking in on Pete Alonso. But he prefaced that by saying that the Mets are still the most likely. And my stance this entire time has been the Mets' moves and what they do this offseason have no bearings on what Pete Alonso ends up doing and where Pete Alonso ends up going. They could have signed an entire starting 9 of free agents before Pete Alonso signed, and I still think that would not have taken them out of the Pete Alonso sweepstakes. He has no bearings, and there's a reason why. David Stearns, this is reality. Don't get upset about this. You can get upset in a few minutes, not about this. David Stearns does not value Pete Alonso. He doesn't care. If David Stearns brings back Pete Alonso, if the Mets bring back Pete Alonso, it'll be purely emotional. It'll be because Steve Cohen wants to please the fan base. It'll be because they will rationalize, hey, we're going to get a lot of home runs out of him. And that's clearly very important. That's not what in 2025 they will. That's not what they're looking at, though. That's not what they're evaluating. They are evaluating whether on a long-term contract, 5 to 7 years, Pete Alonso will provide production for the Mets. And adequate production for the Mets. Ever since I started this show, it's episode 3, I've wondered, when will I have the opportunity to go on my Pete Alonso rant? And I think today might be the day. As a Mets fan, will I be upset if Pete Alonso leaves? Yes! I will be upset. He provided moments. Don't get me wrong. He provided one of the most famous home runs in team history. I will never forget it. That being said, do you make decisions based on emotion in order to determine what will give you the best chance to win a World Series? No, you don't. You can't get emotional. And you know who especially can't get emotional? Because it's his job? David Stearns. He cannot be emotional about this. He needs to make a pragmatic decision. I have numbers, I have beliefs, I have baseball philosophies. What makes the most sense for my team? That is my job to make them win the World Series. What am I supposed to do to accomplish that? And if he doesn't think Pete Alonso is the guy, then it would be malpractice for him to bring him back. And who are we to doubt David Stearns after the season they had last year in his first year as the Mets president of baseball operations? The argument against Pete goes like this. He's getting older. He has began his decline. You will say to me, he hit 35 home runs last year. I get that. And he will hit a lot of home runs this year. Trust me, I know. But if you look at the numbers, factually, he is declining. It is a fact. It's David Stearns' job to predict what Pete Alonso, or any free agent for that matter, will do in the life of a contract he signs them to. And if he doesn't think, if his models don't, analytics, this and that, he makes models. That is his job. And if his models don't predict that Pete Alonso will be anything worth what he's looking for, which is close to $200 million, and that he can get production similar or better production elsewhere, he is going to do that. Go back and look at any power hitting first baseman entering their 30s. If you go look at it, Prince Fielder, Chris Davis, Ryan Howard, the list goes on and on and on. Anthony Rizzo. There's so many players. First basemen, power hitters, enter their 30s, and it doesn't work out. So, two things can be true. I can be sad that Pete Alonso leaves, but it could also be the smart decision. And ultimately, with that mindset, I know this isn't what people want to see me take a side. You want to see me take a side here. But truly, 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 whatever the outcome is, I don't really care that much. Either they bring him back and they overpay, and I don't care. Steve Cohen can do that. I'm not emotional about it, though. If I think David Stearns can win the Mets a World Series by putting a different player at first base, that's what I want. I want a World Series. I'm sorry, Pete. I don't care to see you break the home run record. I care to see the Mets lifting the World Series trophy and bringing a championship back to Queens. All right. That's a show. No Thursday Night Football tonight. Tomorrow we've got hockey. We've got basketball. We'll run into some NFL topics. This was the Early Game Pod. Thanks for listening in.